I was halfway through loading my toolbox into the back of my truck when I heard the unmistakable sound of heels clicking too fast on pavement. I turned, already knowing who it was. Marlene Cartwright. HOA busybody and self-proclaimed neighborhood standards enforcer. She was flanked by two guys in dark polos, both wearing badges that looked like something you'd buy off a party supply website. "Excuse me, sir," Marlene barked, her voice already at full Karen volume. "This vehicle is in violation of HOA Code 14B. No work vehicles may be parked in driveways overnight. You've been warned." I wiped my hands on my jeans. "Marlene, I've told you before, that code doesn't exist." "I've read the bylaws front to back." One of her sidekicks stepped forward, trying to puff himself up. "We're authorized to impound non-compliant vehicles. We'll be towing it today." I stared at the guy, then at the other one fumbling with a clipboard. "Who exactly authorized you?" Marlene crossed her arms. "The HOA board. As vice president, I appointed yourself last month when no one showed up to your emergency meeting," I cut in. "Yeah, I know." That's when I noticed the tow truck creeping around the corner, real low profile, no signage. "These clowns weren't bluffing. You're really gonna try to tow my truck," I said flatly. "Yes," Marlene snapped, "and if you interfere, we'll involve law enforcement." I stepped forward, pulled my wallet from my back pocket and flipped it open. Real badge, real credentials. "I am law enforcement," I said, voice low but clear. "Deputy U.S. Marshal Hunter Zane. You just attempted to unlawfully seize private property, impersonated an officer, and conspired in a fraudulent enforcement action. That's 3 felonies, Marlene." The clipboard guy's face drained completely. The other one took a shaky step back. Marlene blinked like a deer in headlights. "You're bluffing," she whispered. I raised my phone, already recording, and pointed it at the tow truck. "Go ahead. Let's see who you're contracted with. Because someone's going to answer for this." The tow truck whipped into reverse and peeled out, tires screeching. Marlene spun on her fake officers. "Where are you going? He's just bluffing." They weren't listening. Both were already halfway down the block. I looked back at Marlene. "I suggest you get a lawyer and resign from that board you made up, because if you think this ends here, you're dead wrong." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Just this wheezy little gasp, like her world had just cracked open. By the time Marlene shuffled off with her phone glued to her ear, probably trying to reach whatever lawyer she thought would touch this mess, I was already inside, uploading the video from my phone to a private drive. I wasn't just protecting myself. I was building a case. I'd dealt with grifters hiding behind fake authority before. What made this different was the audacity. Fake officers, forged enforcement actions, and now it looked like someone had contracted an unmarked tow truck for a clearly illegal seizure. That wasn't a petty HOA spat, that was organized fraud. I dialed an old contact at the county prosecutor's office, someone I'd worked with on a wire fraud case a few years back. I kept my voice level as I laid out the facts. When I mentioned the tow truck, there was a pause on the line. "Hunter," she said slowly, "you're telling me someone tried to seize your vehicle under color of a fake HOA code, using men impersonating officers and an unregistered tow operator?" "Yeah, and I got the whole thing on video." "I need that footage, now." I sent it across. Within minutes, she looped in a detective from the Financial Crimes Unit. What had started as a neighborhood nuisance was quickly snowballing into a full-scale investigation. Meanwhile, I did some digging of my own. A little public records surfing turned up something interesting. Marlene had filed paperwork 6 months ago forming a Civic Improvement Association. It wasn't the established HOA listed in the property records. This was a new entity, with a name just similar enough to confuse people. She'd then mailed out a revised covenant packet and started collecting dues from anyone who didn't read the fine print. I cross-referenced the address on her filings. It led to a P.O. box in another county. Not only was she not backed by the real HOA, she'd fabricated an entire parallel organization complete with letterhead, phony bylaws, and apparently a few gullible enforcers. The next morning, 2 unmarked cruisers showed up on my street. A detective stepped out with a folder under one arm and a camera crew from the local news not far behind. Turns out I wasn't the only target. 3 streets over, they tried the same thing with a retired schoolteacher, claiming her garden gnome display violated decorum standards and threatening to fine her into foreclosure. Another neighbor, a single mother, had been slapped with monthly compliance surcharges for leaving her trash cans out past noon. The detective, a wiry guy named Elgin with eyes like steel nails, knocked on my door. "You're the marshal?" he asked. "Hunter Zane." He nodded. "You just blew the lid off something big. That tow truck was traced to a shell company. No business license, no insurance, and the 2 guys with badges. One of them's got a record for wire fraud. The other used to sell fake IDs in college." I stepped outside, shutting the door behind me. "What about Marlene?" "She's in custody. We picked her up this morning. She had a folder in her trunk with 27 property addresses marked for high-priority asset recovery. Looks like she was planning to start seizing homes." I felt something cold settle behind my ribs. "On what authority?" "None. It was all a scam. She'd file fake liens through her bogus association, then send out threats using legal-sounding language. People assumed it was legitimate." A few neighbors had gathered by then, drawn by the cruisers and cameras. One of them, an older guy named Bill who ran a small HVAC service, stepped closer. "She tried to fine me $3,000 for parking my trailer in my own driveway," he said. "Said it was visible from the street. I asked for documentation. She said it was confidential." "I paid it just to get her off my back." Detective Elgin's jaw tightened. "We'll need a statement and any paperwork you received." Bill nodded. "I kept it all." Something felt off. By noon, the street was swarming with investigators, and the local news van had set up a live feed right in front of Marlene's house. I watched from my porch as they carried out stacks of forged notices, fake fines, and a laptop that would later reveal spreadsheets listing projected income from enforcement actions. The best part, her so-called board members were already flipping. The clipboard guy, whose real name was Tyler, had confessed to everything under pressure. Said Marlene convinced him they were helping restore order to a lawless neighborhood. "She told us it was all legal," he said, sitting on the curb in cuffs, head in his hands. Said the old HOA was defunct and she was reviving it. The other guy, Brent, didn't say much, just sat there staring at the ground like it had betrayed him. Late that afternoon, I met with Elgin in the driveway. He handed me a printed report. "We've confirmed at least 12 instances of attempted property seizure. 3 of them involved fraudulent liens. You stopped her before she could escalate." I looked out over the neighborhood. Kids were playing in the cul-de-sac again. Someone had fired up a grill across the street. For the first time in weeks, the air felt normal. "She's not the first person to abuse power like that," I said. "No," Elgin agreed, "but she's one of the few who made it look official enough to fool people. People trust authority. She exploited that trust." Before he left, he turned back. "Listen, there's going to be a court hearing. The DA wants you to testify. Think you're up for it?" I nodded. "Absolutely." By the end of the week, every resident who'd paid Marlene's fake dues or fines had been contacted. The county was setting up a restitution fund, and the real HOA, the actual, dormant one, was being revived by a group of residents who weren't interested in power plays, just upkeep and transparency. As for Marlene, she was being charged with multiple counts of mail fraud, impersonating public officials, and attempted grand theft. Her bail was denied after investigators found a passport and plane tickets hidden in her attic. That night, I stood on my porch again, sipping black coffee and listening to the quiet hum of a neighborhood starting to heal. The truck sat in my driveway, untouched. A soft breeze rustled the trees. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I had to watch my back in my own front yard. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, but in tone. The kind of cold that settles in when everyone knows something rotten's been festering just under the surface, and it's finally time to drag it into the light. I sat at the witness table, facing a judge with steel gray hair and an expression like carved granite. Behind me, rows of neighbors filled the gallery, some holding folders, others just gripping each other's hands. These were people who'd been intimidated, lied to, nearly robbed. And now they were watching the whole thing unravel. The prosecution started with the basics: ownership records, business registrations, and the fake notices Marlene had mailed out. But then they brought out the real kicker, a forensic computer analyst who'd pulled metadata from her laptop. Hidden spreadsheets detailed a 5-year plan. Not just fines and dues, property seizures, asset liquidation, even suggested sale prices for homes she didn't own. Projected net gain, the analyst read aloud, was estimated at over $2 million by year 3. Marlene sat at the defense table, eyes vacant. Her lawyer leaned toward her, whispering something, but she didn't respond. She just stared at the floor like it might explain how her fantasy empire had collapsed in under a week. When it was my turn, I kept it simple. I laid out what I saw, what I heard, and what I did. I didn't embellish. I didn't need to. The footage spoke for itself. The badge flashing moment was played on a monitor, and the hush that fell over the room had a weight to it. The judge leaned forward after the video ended. Mr. Zane, in your professional opinion, was this an isolated misunderstanding? Or something more deliberate? I didn't hesitate. This was structured fraud, coordinated, rehearsed, and executed with clear intent to deceive and financially harm residents. If I hadn't intervened, she would have stolen real assets from real people. He nodded once. Understood. No further questions. When I stepped down, I caught sight of Bill in the back row. He gave a small nod, not of celebration, but of resolve. We weren't done yet. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed the steps. I wasn't in the mood. I walked straight through them and kept going until I reached the curb, where Elgin leaned against an unmarked sedan, arms crossed. You made an impression, he said. She going away? Judges already talking about remand. No bail, that spreadsheet sealed it. But there's something else you should see. He opened the passenger door and handed me a folder. Inside were scanned copies of bank transfers, small amounts but regular. All tied to the same account, a nonprofit registered under the name Community Renewal Trust. Marlene's shell, sort of. It's older. Predates her HOA stunt by about a year. Guess who incorporated it? I flipped to the next page. There it was, signature and all, her brother, I said. Yep, lives 2 counties over, works in real estate law, board member on 3 different homeowner associations, and this trust. It's been quietly acquiring tax liens on foreclosed properties. Marlene's scam was just step 1. I closed the folder. So this wasn't just about her playing queen of the cul-de-sac, she was laying groundwork. Elgin nodded. Exactly. A fake HOA here, a hostile lien there. They'd strong-arm people, force them into default, then sweep in through the trust and buy the property at auction. I looked back at the courthouse. And how many of the other board members were in on it, still digging. But we know the clipboard guy Tyler wired over $15,000 to the trust account. Claims he thought it was for maintenance reserves. Maintenance for what? Imaginary flower beds? Doesn't matter. He's cooperating now, gave us access to Marlene's internal emails. You'll want to read those. Back at my place, I powered up my laptop and skimmed through the files Elgin had sent. The emails were worse than I expected, not just schemes, blueprints. Marlene had detailed charts of which neighbors were most compliant by temperament, who was emotionally suggestible, and who had financial softness. She even had a ranking system, green for easy targets, yellow for cautious ones, and red for hostiles. I was red. She'd written next to my name, unmovable, find workaround or isolate. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. She hadn't just wanted control, she wanted domination, and she'd been methodical about it. The next morning, I joined Elgin at a local zoning office. We were meeting with a compliance officer who'd received several complaints from Marlene's association over the past 6 months. The officer, a soft-spoken woman named Denise, pulled up the requests on her monitor. They looked legitimate at first, she said. Letterhead, parcel numbers, even references to municipal code. But something felt off. She clicked open a request that accused a resident of perimeter neglect and demanded city intervention. The attached photos showed a perfectly maintained fence with a single loose slat. "And you flagged this?" I called the number on the form. No one answered. Then I tried the email. It bounced, so I started digging. Found out the association wasn't registered with the city. That's when I stopped processing their requests. "Did you report it?" She nodded. "Last month." But no one followed up, too busy with budget meetings. We thanked her and left, but it was clear. Marlene hadn't just targeted homeowners. She tried to hijack city infrastructure, use real channels to enforce fake rules. Back outside, Elgin lit a cigarette without asking. "This is bigger than we thought. Her brother's trust has ties to 2 other neighborhoods. One's already gone into foreclosure proceedings on 5 homes." I leaned against the car. "You think he's running the same playbook?" "I'd bet my pension on it." We didn't say anything for a while. Just listen to the roar of a garbage truck as it lumbered down the next street. "You ever see something like this before?" I asked. "Not this polished. Usually it's some guy in a basement filing fake liens hoping no one notices. This was a machine." Later that week, the county announced a formal task force to investigate fraudulent HOA activity. They called it Operation Boundary Line. Elgin was tapped to lead it, and I was asked to consult. I didn't hesitate. We started with data mining, cross-referencing lien filings with HOA registrations. Within days, we found patterns. The same trust name, the same phrasing in notices, even the same envelope style. We traced it all back to one office in a strip mall 2 counties north. When agents raided it, they found over 100 pre-filled lien forms, a stack of forged bylaws, and a wall covered in maps, each marked with pins representing target developments. Marlene hadn't built this. She'd been recruited into it. When they arrested her brother, he tried to claim it was all legal. Creative enforcement, he called it. But the paper trail was damning. He'd set up over a dozen fake associations, each with their own P.O. box, each designed to mimic real ones. He'd even hired a graphic designer to make the fake seals look official. The court froze his accounts within 48 hours. Properties were flagged, liens invalidated, and restitution proceedings began. But the real work was just starting. Residents across 3 counties began organizing. Community meetings sprang up, real ones, with bylaw readings and elections. People who'd never spoken to each other before were suddenly allies. They shared documents, compared notices, and found strength in numbers. One night, Bill stopped by my place with a 6-pack and a binder. "You're not gonna believe this," he said. "I found a guy 2 blocks over who used to be a city planner. He's helping us draft new protection stuff that'll make it impossible for this kind of scam to happen again. That's the idea. And we're naming the new HOA ourselves. No more executive boards, every vote's public, every meeting's open." I nodded. "Good." He hesitated at the door. "You ever think about running for president of the new board?" I laughed. "I think I've had enough bureaucracy for one lifetime." He left the binder anyway. Weeks passed. Marlene's trial was scheduled for the fall. Her brother's case would follow. The DA was building a RICO charge, and Operation Boundary Line was expanding statewide. I kept my badge, but I took some time off the field, taught a few seminars on fraud detection, helped neighbors draft charters. And every so often, I'd walk past the spot where they'd tried to tow my truck and just stand there for a minute. Not because I needed the reminder, but because I'd seen what happens when people stop paying attention, when fear and confusion become tools for control. And I'd made a quiet promise to myself, not on my street, not ever again. The morning of the sentencing broke with a heavy mist hanging over the county courthouse, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. I parked across the street, leaned against my truck, and waited. No badge, no weapon. Just a thermos of coffee and a manila folder tucked under my arm. I wasn't here as a marshal today. I was here as a resident, one of dozens who had been dragged into a scheme that nearly carved the heart out of our neighborhood. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with quiet tension. The seats filled quickly: teachers, small business owners, an elderly couple who'd been threatened with requisition fees for hanging a seasonal wreath. Some had been too afraid to speak up back then. Now they wore expressions like stone. Marlene entered shortly after, flanked by 2 deputies. Her orange jumpsuit clashed hard with the high-collar blazer she used to wear while pretending to be in charge. Her hair was pulled back and her face was drained of the smugness she used to carry like perfume. A few seats over, her brother sat with his attorney. He was dressed in a tailored suit, but it didn't fit the room. Not anymore. He looked like a man who just realized the world was a lot colder without the insulation of fake authority. Judge Callahan adjusted her glasses and called the room to order. We are here today for sentencing in the matter of the state versus Marlene Cartwright and Ronald Cartwright. The prosecutor, a direct and precise woman named Calder, approached the bench. She didn't waste time with theatrics. Your Honor, the defendants orchestrated a multi-tiered fraud scheme that impersonated local governance, targeted vulnerable homeowners, and attempted to coerce property transfers through fabricated legal authority. We have documented attempts at unlawful seizure, impersonation of government officials, and coordinated financial deception. The court has seen the evidence. We are seeking the maximum sentence under state law. Judge Callahan nodded once. Understood. Does the defense have anything to present before sentencing? Ronald's attorney rose. Your Honor, my client maintains that while his actions were misguided, his intent was to improve communities through structured oversight. He did not directly threaten or harm anyone. Marlene's court-appointed lawyer didn't even stand, just handed a written statement to the clerk. The judge turned to me. Mr. Zane, I understand you requested to speak on behalf of the residents. I stepped forward, folder in hand. Yes, Your Honor. The room quieted. I've worked on criminal investigations across multiple states. I've seen people take shortcuts, cheat systems, exploit loopholes. But what these two did wasn't just criminal, it was personal. They weaponized trust. They didn't just forge documents or impersonate officials. They stood on people's porches and told them they didn't own their lives anymore, that they had no say. And they did it with the kind of confidence that only comes when you think no one will push back. I opened the folder and held up a photo, one of Tyler, the clipboard guy, standing beside a tow truck with a forged citation in hand. This wasn't a one-off. This was a campaign. And if we hadn't stopped them, they would have taken homes, not just trucks or garden gnomes' homes. I stepped back. Thank you. Judge Callahan didn't flinch. This court finds both defendants guilty on all counts. Marlene Cartwright, you are sentenced to 15 years in state prison without eligibility for parole for a minimum of 7. Your actions constituted deliberate and repeated attempts to defraud, intimidate, and illegally seize private property. Marlene didn't react. Just kept staring at the table in front of her. Ronald Cartwright, the judge continued, you are sentenced to 22 years with a minimum of 10. Your role in structuring this operation, laundering the proceeds through a nonprofit shell, and encouraging others to impersonate public authority elevates your culpability. He blinked once. Then his jaw set like he was trying to swallow the room whole. You may both consider yourselves permanently barred from forming, managing, or participating in any civic organization, neighborhood association, or property oversight entity for life. This court finds you both dangerous to community structure and public trust. The gavel fell. It was done. Outside, the courthouse steps were lined with people. No cheering, no signs, just a quiet, satisfied silence that said, "We endured." We saw it through. I found Bill near the edge of the crowd. He looked like he hadn't slept much, but he was smiling for the first time in weeks. You think that's the last of it? he asked. "No," I said, "but it's the last of them." He motioned down the steps. "You see who showed up?" I turned and spotted the mayor standing beside a few city council members. They weren't campaigning. They weren't giving speeches. They were listening. Bill shook his head. "That's what it took, huh? A fake HOA running a criminal racket before anyone started paying attention." "Better late than never," I said. Turns out the city had quietly opened a task force of its own. They were drafting legislation that would require all homeowners associations to register annually with transparent leadership rosters, public financials, and periodic audits. Any group failing to comply would lose recognition and could not legally enforce fines or property restrictions. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I headed home later that afternoon, passing by yards that had once been too afraid to hang flags or park work trucks. Now there were kids riding bikes again. Someone had even repainted their fence in neon blue just because they could. 3 houses down, a nurse named Carla had put up solar-powered flamingos along her walkway. It was tacky. It was glorious. And no one was going to tell her to take them down. That weekend, we held the first real neighborhood meeting in the community center. Not a fake board, not a hostile takeover, a legitimate gathering. People brought folding chairs, lemonade, and printed proposals. We voted on a maintenance fund, a shared tool shed, and a rotating schedule for helping elderly residents with yard work. No power grabs. No hidden agendas. Just neighbors, finally talking to each other again. After the meeting, I stood near the back, watching as people lingered. Bill walked up and handed me a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" "The new bylaws, drafted by a retired judge and a librarian. We figured if anyone could keep it simple and fair, it'd be them." I unfolded it and scanned the first page. No legalese, no loopholes. Just a 10-point list of common sense rules and a note at the bottom. No fines, no threats, just help. Bill grinned. We even made a motto. "Want to hear it?" I raised an eyebrow. "Let's hear it. Keep it clean, keep it kind, and don't be weird," I laughed. "Honestly. That might be the best governance document I've ever read." He clapped me on the shoulder and wandered off, already deep in conversation with a couple from the next block over. I watched them for a while, people who'd been almost strangers a month ago, now trading phone numbers, offering rides, planning block parties. This wasn't just a recovery. It was a rebuild, one where fear didn't get a seat at the table. I walked home under a sky slowly clearing from gray to gold, the last of the sun slipping between the rooftops like a promise. When I reached my driveway, I paused beside the truck that had started it all. It sat there, dirt on the tires, toolbox still in the back, just as reliable as the day I bought it. No fake citations. No threats taped to the windshield, just a truck. On a driveway. In a neighborhood that finally belonged to its people again.